about some, maybe not necessarily a home run, but just something you're like, you stick out and you're like, that was a hell of a deal. Like,
Oh, I've got a great one.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's a solar panel deal.
uh-oh. Oh, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Oh, I love this one. This was it was on Rolinda Drive in Oak Cliff, towards the middle of last year. Um, this was actually an expired lead. So we prospect really, really regularly in all different facets, everything from text messages, emails. I did quite a bit of snail mail and bandit signs at the beginning, especially when I first started getting into wholesaling. Bandit signs were a killer. I loved it. I don't do it almost at all anymore.
It's funny how marketing changes, right?
Really, yeah.
And that's in all industries. You'll start with this as kicking ass, and
Yep.
after a while, you're like, this shit doesn't really work as
I
much.
warn my guys because we're very text message heavy right now, and I'm just like, hey, like as like what the rules that we're forced to comply with change, this may not be a lead source for us. So
Mhm.
like get comfortable and work hard, but know that like I'm always keeping my eye on the horizon. Enjoy it while it lasts. It's
Yeah,
not here
and
to
while
stay.
it lasts, pump the shit out of that thing because
Absolutely.
you gotta be like, go, because
Yeah.
otherwise, because shit changes.
Yeah, it does regularly.
It just changes.
Yeah.
So
But no, this was a deal that I called him as an expired, which is an old school. Like I was there on the first of the month, picking up the phone calls one by one in the MLS, calling expired listings. This guy hired a friend as a realtor. It was his dad's house. Dad passed away, divorced. Pretty clear title, other than the fact that dad was dead. But we had one heir. That's who I was talking to. Nobody else involved, so it was pretty clean. Other than the guy hadn't heard from his realtor in like 2 months. It was like one of those deals where like the agent didn't know what he was doing with a distressed property on the MLS, so he didn't price it appropriately and he didn't service it appropriately at all for what it was. He could have sold it in like 3 days.
yeah.
Like, he should have sold that thing in 3 days. But it was just a combination of like that agent not knowing what he was doing, really, really poor marketing and pricing, nothing on the inside, etc. Anyway, I could go on for days about how bad of a job that agent did.
I'm sure others too. You'd be like, this one and that one.
Oh, and we
this
do.
agent.
Yeah, we do all the time. Absolutely. It's good to do those case studies because it's like, there's people out like the minimum requirement for being a real estate agent is not very high.
It's this.
Yeah. Right.
You,
Yeah.
you breathe. You're
Yeah.
good. Here's your license.
Exactly. And Guy and I ended up talking, and that was one of the things. He's like, oh, I don't know. I feel like I don't really feel like I owe this guy anything. I just want to make sure this doesn't come back. I called him and he had no idea. I was like, your contract with your agent expired yesterday. He's like, really? I was like, I knew it was coming up. I just had no idea. I was like, yep. At the beginning, his goal, dad had a little bit of debt on the property. His goal after everything was to like walk away with 90,000 at the beginning. And that's how he had it listed. It's obvious that's what he told his buddy, and his buddy threw it up there for that. Made no effort to educate the seller in that situation. Like 6 months before dad died, he got sold a solar lease, which was borderline criminal. I mean, like the guy was like on like his third cancer remission and like 82 years old, and they sold him a 25-year solar panel lease. I was like,
By the way, we know you're about to die, but you need this solar panel.
that was borderline criminal.
That's crazy.
And eventually we got to a point where I could only really afford, after we paid off the solar panels and everything else, the way the deal was structured, the guy was going to walk away with 50. He ended up coming back, and after I gave him like an education, like, hey, here's what we can expect. Here's the comps. Here's what I'm looking to make on the deal, what I might sell it for. He actually ended up knowing that we wholesale that deal during the transaction, because I ended up having a new buyer come to me. And I've got a great relationship with him now, Nat Tang. I'm looking to sell him another thing over in that area of Dallas right now. But he came to me looking for deals, told me where he was looking. I was like, oh, I've got one there right now. That looks kind of nasty. This might actually be a good fit. And I ended up going to the seller and telling him, look, here's the deal. The contract says 50, but I think he had almost $30,000 worth of lease that was leaned against the property with the solar panels that we were having a really hard time getting around. I told him, here's the deal. If I can go get those solar panels off, that's what I was going to say. After we educated him, his new goal was 70. He's like, if I can get 70 out of the house, I'm good. And I told him, like, here's the deal. Like, I can get you 50, but here's the deal. If you agree to give me 50 and I go work my tail off to figure a way to get around those solar panels so that we don't have to pay them, can we split the savings? So it ended up being an extra 14,000 to each of us. So I ended up, I immediately sold the contract like 2 days later for, I think it ended up being like a $17,000 markup. It was a pretty solid markup. Again, the listing agent should have sold it. If he had just dropped his price like 20K, he would have sold it almost instantaneously. But again, he just didn't educate his client. And at that point, he still would have walked away with like 50K after closing costs and paying off the solar panels and everything else. And so I told him, like, look, this is pretty much the position. This was the best case scenario for you anyway, was you walking away with 50,000. So let's make it that 50,000, and then I'll work my tail off to get these solar panels removed. We did, again, by the grace of an amazing title
They
company.
actually removed the solar panels off the house?
I
Or did you
paid
get
$2,000 out of my pocket to actually have Black Belt Luis's company
Okay.
come remove them from the structure, because the way the underwriter saw it is the lien didn't belong to the property address. The lien was filed against the decedent, against the previous owner, against the dead guy. And the only reason that the lien was attached to that address is because the fixture was attached to that address.
Right.
So if we could prove that there was no fixture, then there was no lien. And so I paid the $2,000, and at that point we assessed, and the seller, or the seller's son, talked to his attorney and just made sure, like, hey, the worst thing that they're going to do is come after the estate. The only thing in the estate was the house. Everything else was dead. So it's like, okay, you know, you're selling this outside of the estate anyway. So the only thing that they could really pursue would be the estate. So he's like, I'm comfortable with that. Like, cool. He wanted to tell that solar company to go to hell, and he felt like that was the best way to do it. So I paid money out of my pocket to have them removed, and which was about $2,000. I had paid $2,000 to have them removed and just put in a storage unit somewhere. And we ended up making like $31,000 on that deal, because I made the extra 14 and he made the extra 14. So he made 64, which was just shy of his overall 70 goal of net. And I made 34 on the deal, and it just worked out to be like this perfect. It was a pain in the neck, and I was cursing solar companies and solar panel leases like the whole time. But I mean, that was one of those deals where I probably spent 14 hours on the phone, just like on hold with different companies, because the solar panel company wasn't really the person who helped